Jaime Moyer began his career as a soft-throwing lefty, and until the age of 50, that's exactly what he was. Pitching for numerous teams and helping many over 25 seasons, he was the contrast of velocity in a changing era. So let's see how a guy who could barely top 85 pitched in the majors for so long.
Totally sports-esque. Major League.
Jaime Moyer was born in 1962 in Pennsylvania, and his father Jim had tried out for two teams his son would later play for in the Phillies and the Cardinals, but he never quite made it. However, his son showed more potential. During his high school career, he dominated with his fastball curveball mix, going 22-3 at Sauderton High School. In his junior year, he went 10-0 and even threw 3 consecutive no-hitters. But something that was always a problem, at least in the eyes of scouts, was his velocity. Scouts didn't believe his arm strength would translate at the next level, and he went undrafted out of high school. And to make things worse, when he attended a tryout camp, there was another player there who was also named Jaime Moyer, who was chosen to advance instead of him. But he pressed on, choosing to attend St. Joseph's University, where he immediately became the team's ace. He posted an ERA of 1.99 over his career, and he learned the pitch that would define his career in the changeup. It was taught to him by Kevin Quirk, a former Yankee draft pick, and it would later become the pitch that kept him in the big leagues for so long. And after a great junior season in 1984, the Chicago Cubs drafted him in the 6th round, and he wasted no time proving himself in the minors. He posted an ERA just over 3 in Double and Single A, and began 1986 in Pittsfield, posting a .88 ERA over 4 games, then being promoted to Triple A, where after 5 starts, he was promoted to the majors. And in his debut, in front of his parents and his college coach, he faced his childhood idol in Steve Carlton and the Philadelphia Phillies. He went 6 1/3, gave up 4 earned runs, and he walked away with his first major league win. But there were still struggles. He was often behind the count, and hitters were quick to punish his mistakes. He ended his rookie season with a 5.05 ERA, and his sophomore campaign wasn't much better, despite a few good starts, such as opening day in '87, where he struck out 12 Phillies and carried a no-hitter into the 9th. But the consistency wasn't there. He was very predictable, and he started doubting his changeup, which got him into more trouble. But he would start to find his footing in the next season, lowering his ERA to 3.48, almost matching a young Greg Maddux, who was on the same staff. But just 1 month after his marriage in the offseason, he would be dealt to the Texas Rangers in a 9-player trade, the first of many times him and his family would have to move. It seemed like a fresh start, but injuries quickly struck. A shoulder strain derailed much of his '89 season, and he finished with a record of 4-9. In 1990, he was shifted to the bullpen, and after the season, they cut ties altogether. The Cardinals gave him a chance in '91, but the stint was a disaster. He went 0-5 with a 5.74 ERA before being released again. And by '92 at age 29, he looked more like a coach than a pitcher. The Cubs even offered him a job as a minor league pitching instructor after he failed to make the team after an invitation to spring training. But he wasn't ready to give up. He still believed he could pitch in the majors, and in May of '92, he would sign with the Detroit Tigers, who were looking for a mop-up reliever. And being that he was already considered a veteran, they wanted someone who could guide the younger pitchers. And that led him to the Tigers AAA team in Toledo. And there, something finally clicked. He went 10-8 with a 2.86 ERA, and just as importantly, he regained his confidence. And the Orioles took notice, as they would sign him to a minor league deal in 1993. At first, it looked like the same old story. He struggled early, even wearing a garter belt under his uniform for good luck, and he nearly washed out again. But this time, with help from Orioles pitching coach Dick Bossman, Moyer rediscovered his best weapon, which was his changeup, and suddenly, hitters couldn't touch him. He went on to finish the '93 season 12-9 with a 3.43 ERA, his best year in the majors to that point. Baltimore kept him around for 2 more seasons, but inconsistency crept back in. By '96, he was bouncing between roles with the Red Sox before being traded to Seattle. And again, that was a turning point. With Seattle, Moyer finally found a long-term home. He provided a contrast to Randy Johnson, being about a foot shorter and throwing a fastball that might spare a bird. But it worked. In '97, he went 17-5 with a 3.86 ERA as the Mariners won the AL West. And in his 11th season, he finally got to pitch in the playoffs. But it didn't go too well, as he gave up 3 over 4.2 in the loss to his former team in the Baltimore Orioles. But as Randy Johnson would be traded to the Astros halfway through '98, Moyer took on a bigger role, and he was ready. Over '98-'99, he had his 2 best seasons by B-WAR, going 29-17 for a Mariners team that regressed, pitching over 220 innings in both years for the first time, as he had a 3.7 ERA. He had the most strikeouts in his career in '98 at 158, and he recorded his 100th win and his 1,000th strikeout that season. And always crucial for his success, he walked just 1.6 per 9, the 3rd best in the American League. as he was also named the Mariners Pitcher of the Year by baseball writers in both of those seasons. He regressed in 2000 because of injuries, but he would regain himself as the pinnacle came in 2001. The 2001 Mariners were historic, with Ichiro signing with the team. He led them as he became the second rookie to win MVP, but numerous players including Brett Boone, Mike Cameron, and John Olerud had career years, and the pitching went along with it. Alongside Freddie Garcia, Moyer was a 20-game winner for the first time, tying a career best with a 3.43 ERA, the sixth best in the American League, again walking less than 2 batters per game as he finished 4th in Cy Young voting. Being a big reason, the Mariners won 116 games, tied with the 1906 Cubs for the most in history. And going into the playoffs, he was taking on the role as number 2. And after the Mariners lost Game 1 against Cleveland, his start was huge, and he would deliver, going 6, giving up 1, and striking out 4, as the Mariners won 5-1 for his first playoff win. But after they would split the next 2, it came down to a decisive Game 5. And in his 15th season, Moyer was about to pitch the biggest game of his life, and he delivered, again going 6, again giving up just 1, and striking out 6, as the Mariners won 3-1 to advance. But they found themselves in trouble in the LCS, losing the first 2 games at home against the Yankees. And if they were to have any chance, Game 3 in New York was a must-win. Moyer gave up a 2-run home run to Bernie Williams in the first, but he would settle in from there. The final score here doesn't tell the story, as the Mariners didn't score until the 5th inning, scoring 2, then adding 12 the rest of the way, as Moyer pitched 7, and he got his 3rd win. But that would be the Mariners' last win, as they would lose the series in 5. The ultimate season coming up short for them, but in their playoff run, you can say Moyer was their MVP. He stayed in Seattle until 2006, earning his lone All-Star appearance in 2003, when he went 21-7 with a 3.27 ERA at the age of 40. He would start to regress some after the season, and so did the Mariners, winning less than 70 games in 04 and 05, and by mid-2006, he said he felt drained with his teammates' nonchalant attitude, and he considered retirement. But when he was asked if he would accept a trade to his hometown team, the Phillies, he changed his mind. Back in Philadelphia, Moyer found himself in a perfect situation, as a veteran on a team heading in the right direction. He won 5 of his 8 starts for the Phillies in 06, as he would finish 2nd in the division. He had some ups and downs the next year, missing out on 200 innings by .2, though he still contributed 14 wins, as the Phillies won the NL East for the first time since 1993. But they ran into October. They lost the first 2 games at home, and they relied on Moyer in Game 3, and he did his job, going 6 and just giving up 1. But the Phillies gave him no run support, later tying the game at 1, but losing it in the 8th, as the Phillies would be swept. But that would lead into 2008, where everything came together. At 45 years old, he was the oldest player in the league, this coming 1 year after him and David Wells combined for the oldest combined age of 2 lefty pitchers at 88 years old. And on the same day he became the oldest player to ever have a bobblehead giveaway, he became the oldest Philly to get a base hit. And Moyer was huge for this team. Only him and Cole Hamels posted a WAR over 1 and an ERA under 4 in the rotation, as Moyer led the team in wins at 16. In a season where he had an average fastball speed of 81.1, throwing cutters 29.5% of the time. But with a high-powered offense, they won 92 games to again win the National League East. And the rest of his team had to pick him up, as in the postseason, he didn't start out too well. He became the second oldest pitcher to start a playoff game behind Jack Quinn in 1929, who was 46 years old, as he lasted just 4 innings in the loss. But the Phillies won the series the next night, allowing him to become the oldest pitcher to pitch in the LCS. But his Game 3 start did not go well, as he gave up 6 over just 1 1/3, his shortest start in almost 9 years. But the Phillies won the next 2, and 22 years after he debuted, he was going to the World Series, against a team that didn't exist for his first 11 seasons, in the Tampa Bay Rays. The first 2 games in Tampa were split, and he took them out in a huge Game 3, and he had a vintage performance, going 6, giving up 3, and striking out 5. The Phillies holding on to win, as he received a no decision. But his performance became more noteworthy, as it was later revealed he pitched this game with a stomach virus, making the most impressive performance in a championship series by a guy with the flu. And it would propel the Phillies to win the World Series in 5 games, as after 22 seasons with 7 different teams, he finally helped a team reach the top. A team whose most recent World Series parade in 1980 led him to skip school to attend. He would then sign a 2-year contract with the Phillies, where he set more milestones in terms of age, and dealt with some ups and downs. After a rough start to 2009, he was moved to the bullpen to make room for Pedro Martinez, the kind of attitude that kept him in the majors for so long. And just before the end of the season, as the Phillies had another division title locked up, he would unfortunately tear 3 muscles in his abdomen and his groin. keeping him from the postseason roster, as the Phillies made the World Series again, but they lost to the Yankees. And after Ken Griffey Jr. retired in early 2010, just him and Omar Vizquel were the only active players who had played in the 80s, with assumptions he would be done after this year. He became the oldest pitcher at 47 to throw a shutout on May 7th, and also the first to throw a shutout in 4 different decades, and that kind of defined his year. He also became the oldest pitcher to beat the Yankees, and he passed Robin Roberts for the most home runs given up in a career at 506. But just a month later, he left to start after 1 inning after feeling pain in his arm, and that turned out to be a UCL sprain, which would unfortunately end his season. He pitched in the Dominican Winter League, where he hurt his elbow once again, and at the age of 47, he needed Tommy John. At that point, there was really no reason he needed to keep going, and recovering from Tommy John at almost 50 seemed pretty unlikely, but he persevered, saying he didn't want to retire wondering what could have been. He threw an impressive bullpen in front of scouts, and as the Rockies gave him the best offer, he signed a minor league contract with the team, another team that didn't exist when he debuted. And to everyone's surprise, he made the opening day roster as a number 2 starter, and he got what he really wanted on April 17th, when he would pick up a win, passing Jack Quinn, who was 49 years and 2 months old in 1932, for the oldest pitcher to pick up a win, becoming the oldest player to record an RBI a month later, and 5 days after extending his oldest winner record, he pitched at Marlins Park, that being the 50th stadium he would pitch in, a record that would be very hard to top. But he almost never threw in the 80s, and he already had the disadvantage of pitching at Coors Field. He went 2-5 with a 5.7 ERA before he would be released. He had minor league stints with the Orioles and Blue Jays, hoping to pitch at the age of 50, and after not reaching the majors again, he hoped to return with a knuckleball. But in early October 2013, just before he turned 51, he decided that he was done playing baseball. Jaime Moyer pitched 25 seasons for 8 different teams, and the only pitcher with more MLB seasons was Nolan Ryan at 27, whose repertoire was a little bit different. He compiled 269 wins with 2,400 strikeouts and a 4.25 ERA over more than 4,000 innings. He didn't receive much Hall of Fame consideration, not really surprising, but his story is more about persevering. Along with still being able to make millions, it was ultimately a story of wanting to prove that you can still do it. Being a real contrast to what was developing at the end of his career, as pitchers who could touch 100 started to become very common, Moyer was still there, barely touching 80. And as most seen in his years on the Mariners and the Phillies, he was very effective for his mentality, his selection, and his location, giving many around his age the same hope as they go out into the backyard and tear their UCL, and their ACL, and their marriage. Hopefully you liked this video, and if so, please consider liking and subscribing for new videos every week. Thank you.